This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megafoon Rugby.
Welcome back to the Lekker Rugby Pod. A nice little weekend preview. And Harry, the best thing about all of this is that you guys just moved up an hour, back an hour. I don't never understand the daylight saving thing. The point is, you've had your coffee, so your insights will be even more insightful than normal.
Yeah, well, Einstein told us this is all made up anyway. It's all relative. They sent him as a young man to synchronize all the clocks in Switzerland, and he came back to his bosses and said, actually, the clock tower and the sundial is more correct. But in our desire to have everyone experience the same Instagram picture at the same time, and to pretend that's true, we have to do these very weird time zones. Time zones are so strange. In fact, I always thought Cape Town should be in a different time zone than Johannesburg, by the way. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, there should be two, the West and the East.
No, man, we're simple people over here in South Africa. We do things properly, and so much. We don't have time for nonsense.
We're not simple people in Cape Town, I'll tell you that.
I'm not saying you're simple. I'm not saying I was stupid for that, man. I'm just saying, this is your photo, man. Yeah.
Trust me, we're very popular. I would win an election just on that one thing. We want to be in a different time zone than Joburg.
Okay, man, take your stuff and go. I thought we were talking about Abe Lincoln's assassination. That was a new high for us, or a new low for that matter. But now we talked about Einstein and clocks in Switzerland. So,
I've got more coming, man. I got more coming. Don't worry.
Anyway, I dragged you out of bed on a Friday morning. Can you believe it? To talk about this upcoming weekend's games, Champions Cup. A little bit of a, I don't know, split personality almost. The Stormers keeping the cards close to the chest, and now announcing the team eventually. The Bulls going all in, telling us who's going there, where, and then announcing the team quite early. And the Sharks just don't care. Typical surfer boy attitude. Looks like they want to pitch up, get it over with, and go focus on the URC. So let's talk about each team. Which of our teams, the Stormers and the Bulls, can actually win these games. So let's start with the Stormers. Let's talk about the team at last.
Yeah. So I've known this team for a while. Therefore, you have too. But and the Stormers have. But there was a reason why they wanted to delay that. This gets into the tricky part of the season where you're literally planning 3 games at the same time with sort of a Monte Carlo that you play out, sort of a chess, if this, then that, this, then. Because there's a couple of permutations here. Stormers win, Bulls win. Suddenly we come back to Cape Town and play a quarterfinal, There's a non-negotiable Connacht game in the URC. URC is always the first and solemn obligation of a team that's second on the log, No matter what you say, that's going to be their best bet. And you also have people coming back from injury, or you have people that are needing game time who, someone like Dion Fourie. And finally, you have the actual game plan itself of Toulon. And to some extent, there was a bit of a wait. So as you know, there's a great lock crisis in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, and running out of locks, and not even guys that could play lock, like Ben Jason Dixon. So in a way, waiting on Toulon's, the news from Toulon was important as well, because Toulon has played a certain way using its tight forwards, and if they're not there, then it's different. And then you also have to game plan it out. So what if we lose? And what does that look like? Or what if we win and the Bulls lose and we go to Glasgow? So there's all kinds of things you have to do in your mind that have to do with what you were discovering at Bulls Land: GPS, load, peak, carry, taper, muscle fiber, this hamstring not as strong as that hamstring. There's all kinds of things that people know. Dobbo was good enough to sort of share the internal thinking and welcomed me sharing it on the show. So I'm not betraying any confidences, but the way they're stacking it is, we built a solid campaign in the IRC. Some of our problems on injury and fitness will be resolved in time for IRCness. But the non-negotiable, the must win, is the Connacht game, which is very strange. You would say that's almost write it down in the books. But it's not, because what if you go balls to the wall in Champions Cup, you fall short, or you win and you have to go another step and then you win again? You're getting yourself into a very strange position of all your eggs are in every basket and they're in none. This is difficult.
Schrodinger's cat, Harry. There we go.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is, it's a bit like this woman that just came out and announced, I think it was in a UK paper, she's pregnant, and they were trying to discover who the father was, and she revealed to the doctor that she had had relations with two guys, but they were twins, and they were 4 days apart. And it turns out that in medical science, even today, 2026, they could not tell her who the father is. So she's going to have to live a life like that. I mention that story because I like to point out this is not an exact science. And you don't sometimes know exactly what the game plan of Toulon's going to be. And so they could do something completely different. And there's no way to tell. And if we win, we'll blame it on, we'll give credit to something. It may not even be that thing. It may be something else. So Darbo's really good at making sure that the chaos of life is part of this as well. He's not one of those guys who's going to say, I know what will happen here, there, and everywhere. But I'll give you the basic game plan here, which is have a team that's really quick. Ollie Kebbel, Andre Hugo Venter, Neetling Fouché, a mobile front row. Adrie Smith, Connor Evans, mobile locks. Paul de Villiers, Diamani, and Ruiz, a lightning quick back trio. With a back line that's anchored by Kobus Reinach and young man Yuri Mattia, your favorite. Flyers, Zas and Willemse. Remember Willemse ran down Caleb Clark, the All Blacks, with, I think he was about 6 meters behind. He ran him down. He's plenty quick for a wing. And then a bash midfield of Dan, the man, and Ruan. And then the trickster, Gelant at the back. And then what the thought process is, get us to 50. Get us to 55 minutes, be in the game, and then we can roll out our line-out captain, JD Schikkeling. We can have Dion Ferry playing hooker, interestingly enough, so an extra fetcher. And then Tienason, who's been one of the top carriers. So now you have carry monsters coming on for whoever got tired, probably Diamani. And then Imikon servicing Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu to bring up that final half hour, maybe 35 minutes. And Simonani to fit in wherever he has to fit in. And then the floater, Willemse, can float wherever he needs to within that setup. So 50 minutes, just kind of think of 50 minutes as the game plan. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm like the woman with the twin fathers, whatever. I don't know how Toulon's going to play. Toulon's played a certain way, and it hasn't been very successful in the top 14. But they can play different ways. So you read the game. You have some of your best game readers on the sidelines, on the touch lines. Probably Kobus plays a bit longer than 50 minutes, so you have an overlap there. And then see if Schikkeling and the boys can bring it home in the pack with a big maul drive. So yeah, that's the lineup. Was anything in that lineup surprising for you?
Well, we always talk about Rassie knowing, Rassie can see the future, and Rassie knows. And both Dion Free and Marco van Staden playing hooker for their respective franchises.
Yes.
He did it 3 years ago, brother. Why are you only catching up now? That's one thing that stood out to me. One thing that I noticed that last week's press conference with John Dobson said specifically, they don't know about Toulon. They've never been to Toulon. They don't know what it's like. How much of a role do you think Kobus Reinach would have played in terms of his knowledge of French conditions and the likes? That's the first question, and I'll get to the second one just now about how Toulon's going to play. But let's talk about Kobus Reinach's influence and guidance, maybe.
Yeah, so Kobus Reinach spent a lot of time in Montpellier, which is not very far from Toulon, and would have played them many, many a time. Stade Mayol is right in the center of Toulon. Toulon often gets confused just because of the name similarity with Toulouse. Actually, Toulon is a port city. Ibn Etzebeth spent a lot of time there as well. It's not that big, actually. It's definitely a heartland of rugby. Rugby in France is really the South and the Southwest in particular. It's soccer country the minute you get over to Marseille, and it's soccer country the minute you get to Bordeaux and North. So you're in the heartland. It's a forbidding, intimidating stadium. As Dubbo put it to me, you have to walk right into the middle of town, and the fans are rabid. They don't care about away games. They are all about the home, the fortress. There's a lot of medieval buildings still in Toulon. And as any port city is, it winds down in narrowing little labyrinth-like roads into the heart, and that's where everything takes place. It's wonderful, actually, wonderful place to visit and be, but it can be daunting for the visitor. Toulon's been a bully side, beat us, I think, by using bully tactics in South Africa. So they're kind of well known, but his point's well taken. Is that they're a bit of a mystery in how they'll pitch up for this fixture. They've been sort of middle of the road, top 14. They flirted with the Harry Index for a while, and they dropped out. And I'll tell you the reasons why. They have had a terrible lineout. I don't think Dave Ribbons is playing, former Stormer, a good Cape Town boy, and very brutal in his own fashion. But the lineout's been badly called, and that kills you in the top 14. They don't chase the kicks. They're one of the worst kick chasing teams on the planet. They kick to kick out, and they give you a line out, which they hardly ever contest. It's strange. They've almost ceded part of the game. They don't challenge. So they chased only about 7% of their kicks, and then the bottom 10% for lineouts. Bottom 10% in all the world, taking 40 teams, everything except Super Rugby. They always exit by kick. They are not one of the top teams of not running exits out. They will not play with the ball in their own 22. That sets up a juicy opportunity for Gaza at the wing, with Khalan coming off a channel, perhaps Zas as well on runbacks. I mean, if you're going to get 7, 8, 10, kicks, not all of them are going to go out, or you might have a quick line out opportunity. So look for the quick line out. The Stormers are going to try to play very quickly with this mobile pack and wear out the big, heavy Toulon pack. The other thing that they're susceptible to is the jackal. They're very bad at going deep in the phases, so they tend to kick as well, but not chase, just long kicks. They're more of a territorial type team. They're not gain line monsters, especially with Ribbons out. They don't have anyone who could just bash over. So in a way, I think it's fine for the Stormers to pick a little bit of a lighter weight pack, but very quick, because it's going to be on the jackal and the double tackle. Norman Laker's code is all about doubles, doubles, doubles. He wants a man low, he wants a man high-ish. He wants to monster that tackle and create opportunities for his jacklers, Branas and Paul and others. Diamani's not bad. Ruiz is getting over the ball a lot too. So those doubles. So how does that match up with Toulon? Toulon is the master of evading the double tackle. They don't commit two tacklers. They're, I think, bottom 4% in the whole world of committing two tacklers to a tackle. How do they get around that? They go out the back. So they pull back passes all the time, forwards to backs. They just don't like to get tied up in the demi-melee, as they call it. So Stormers' plan, basically, set up the kick return. Don't just rely on Khalan thinking of something out of his arse, but have it set up. Have Sasha geared to be a run-back specialist. You know how good he is if he has just 10 meters of space, and if he has Willemse to give to as well, and then a converter like Zas, there might be a free try or two free tries on offer, because they always kick and they don't chase well. The final thing is that line out is so leaky that you think almost JD Schickerling is going to come on at 50 minutes and they're going to get him up in the air on every single Toulon line out. So because you can create a line out anytime you want, look for the Stormers to create line outs on purpose instead of always doing kick chase themselves, because they think that's a vulnerability. What is the best thing about Toulon? What is the absolute best thing, and why they're winning when they have this shitty line outs and they don't chase their kicks and all that stuff? They finish their line breaks. They are one of the best teams in the world at, when they make a break, converting their break into a try. I think they're top 5. So that's a danger paired up against the Stormers' greatest strength. What are the Stormers the best at in the whole world? Scramble defense, not letting line breaks turn into tries. So that's, if you just want to watch this as a neutral, look and see what those two things, play out as. And I think we're in the knockout portion of the season in every comp, not just in the Champions Cup. So even how the Urk is going, you can start to see the stinginess of the Stormers on line breaks. I kind of think that favors the Stormers. I think on this type of day, the line breaks won't be as easy to finish for Toulon as they were all season. And the stopping of a line break will be the same as it ever was all through the season. And so the defense will usually win in this type of game. If the game is tight, the score is tight, and around 50 minutes, it's still a game time. if Toulon comes home, blows out the doors, and Yuri Matia has the kind of match that sometimes a young fly-off will have, if Kobus Reinach is rusty, as sometimes will happen when you've been out for a month or so, or if there's cards or so forth, then, obviously then you can throw everything I just said out the window. And it's going to be one of those horrible days like it was at the Stoop with the Harlequins, with all of us were out there. It was such a jolt. We just got a hiding with our pants pulled down.
Yeah. I'm interested why Yuri suddenly and Sasha on the bench. I know you explained a bit about that, but Yuri hasn't got that many opportunities. And now to play him in such a big game, so much at stake. Schrodinger's cat comes to mind again. Are they in this competition or are they not in this competition? Are they alive or they're not alive? Are they alive and dead at the same time? Why now? Why not give him a bit of a run beforehand?
Okay, so don't take this as something straight out of Dobbo's mouth, but don't take this as something not out of Dobbo's mouth. Somewhere in between. There is a danger for Sasha to overplay when by selection, it's almost like we know you're playing 80, or we know you're playing until you don't play at the very end. There is a beauty sometimes in telling a guy like Sasha, I want you to be like a coach, earpiece in, chatting as much as you can with coach on the sideline, watching the whole thing transpire. And then being that super striker, like in soccer, Sasha's a big soccer fan, being that guy that comes in, with 30 minutes to go, 35 minutes to go, and you just take it over. So by the time he comes on, there will have been a full analytics report delivered to the touchline, completely vetted from every source, inside and outside that coach's box, will be in his hands. And he's a fantastic speed reader. He's very analytical himself. And that game plan is better to put in Sasha's hands than Yuri's. If you try to make Yuri the closer guy and say, we're putting it all on you, you have to close this thing out, it's a different experience. It's better to say, just do your thing, Yuri. Do what you've been doing all season, which is playing very well, by the way. His form is really good. And say, you don't have to be the 10 that we play off. Kobus is here. We're playing off Kobus. He's going to put you in a spot. Sometimes you won't even be first receiver. A lot of times the ball's going to go from Kobus to Dan. And then you're going to cut out the back and you're going to take that second one and then you can kick, you can diagonal, or you can run. And then the minute it's not working, like the second it's not working, then, good job. Shakes hands, goes, sits down. Job well done. And what's a job well done? Don't be out of the game at 50 minutes. Just get us to 45, 50 minutes in good shape. Are we down 10? Are we down 7? Fine. Stormers score predominantly in the second half by 60% and close out really well. Fitness levels will be higher than Toulon's. Speed of play will be higher. The ruck will be higher. And so they have faith in their ability to close with impregnable line out with Schickerling on, Dion Ferry coming on and being a nuisance, maybe even with Paul at the same time, having Zach Porthen coming back onto the front row and just mooring people at scrums with that Bok knowledge and IP. Marcel Tennyson's been a really heavy carrier and quick and good feet. And then you have the ability with Imi Khan, when he comes on, when Reinach is spent, which might be 60, 65 minutes, maybe 70 minutes, Imad Khan is probably the quickest one from ruck to ruck to ruck in the Stormers setup. So it tells you right there that the thinking is the final 20, 25, 30 minutes is actually going to be attack speed. In the first hour, 50 minutes, it's going to be pack speed. And so it's a matchup that looks like it could go any way. I would say for the neutral, again, this is going to be a really fun game to watch because it's uncertain. And no one can really figure out, the exact DNA of this one.
The thing that interests me before we move on to the next game, Toulon is, I think, 11th in the top 14 at the moment, and but they still have a very good chance of going all the way in this Champions Cup if they can just get the act together. I've got a feeling they're going to be focusing on this, and especially with those rabid crowds behind them, they're going to want to deliver on this one. And I think that, again, it's a bit of a wounded animal scenario. We talked about this earlier this season when the Lions played one of the Welsh teams. it was Ospreys who heard that they're going to be cut, remember? And they spread out of their skins.
Yeah.
I'm expecting something similar tomorrow from Toulon.
I think emotionally, yes, but I think it's too late in the game to reinvent yourself in the new style of rugby. I think they have to score too many points, and Toulon's not able to play. I think Toulon's struggling in the new interpretation and the space allowance of rugby, and that's why they've kind of gone into the doldrums. I agree with you completely on the issue of, is this their everything? Yes, this is their everything match, because they know top 14's done, it's finished, finishing class, nothing there for them. This is it. And they French teams love the European competition, the Champions type format. It's at home. It is one of those things, this is the gunfight at the OK Corral, this is it, and yes, the problem, I suppose, is when you do that, you actually pile extraordinary pressure on yourself. And then on the Stormer side, if you select in a certain fashion where you're basically saying, we're cool, we're fine, we know we can hang with anybody, and we're not trying to do anything different than we've done all season, which has been in almost every match to the end. Only lost 3 times in the York. I think it's easier for them to be the spoil sport, to make the crowd quiet, start to boo and hiss and whistle and do whatever they start to do, which is funny. The one thing is the French crowds that I think is great is they never stop playing the music. There's just always a guy with a tuba and a cello and a big drum. It doesn't matter if the score is
they don't play Sweet Caroline, I'm happy. Yeah.
No, they play old hymns and stuff. It's very funny.
Right.
Yeah. So they'll just transition, if it's not going well for them, into a big party, a carnival on the seaside. Yeah. So I think why I think the Stormers will win by 5 and possibly by more, but 5 is my pick, is sometimes it's too hard to turn the ship when you've been going a certain way too long and just rely on emotion up against a very battle-hardened Stormers team that's faced a lot of adversity and seemed to climb through. There's this sort of reawakening of, what is our DNA this season? What is our, what are we? We're a defensive juggernaut. We kill people on the gain line. We get over the ball. We slow it by skillum, by whatever we got to do. And we even pilfer and we get it. And not even just pilfer to get a penalty to kick to the corner. Pilfer, pull, gets a Diamani, run away and find streakers on the side. Convert turnovers into actual breakaway tries, scrappy tries, weird tries. The other thing is the maul drive. It's not something you can suddenly get. If your lineout's in trouble, this late in the season, your lineout's in trouble. If you're missing a lock and you have to have that lock, Ruben van Heerden would be nice to have right now, but JD Schikkerling runs a very solid lineout. And I think the other thing is on the targets. Ruiz is a target, Diamani's a target. You can lift Paul, and you've got 2 solid locks that get up there. Connor Evans is a good lineout lock. He's still growing into his body, but he's not, he's a really good in the air. So, I think Toulon's got those vulnerabilities. Stormers are not stupid. They're going to find those places, or not. If they find those places, those things that I've talked about, we will win by 5. If for some reason Toulon can turn it into a pressure game on a young fly-off and it's all on Yuri Matia, then step up, Yuri. This is your time. This is one of those times where I think a lot of people are saying he's that guy. So be him. Be that guy.
Lastly, sorry, there's one other question. The theatrics surrounding the squad going to Toulon, not saying who's on the plane, and they tried to explain it, but I mean, to me, it seems to be a bit, sorry, Dobbo, I know, a bit childish. Almost. What was the thinking behind that?
Oh, it was a hell of a trip. So first of all, there's stuff that people don't know in the public domain about how hard it was to actually get there. And when you send a crew to Toulon, it's not the whole thing. You don't have everyone. You're not sending the whole apparatus, and so you have people that you think are doing things, especially on the press corps, especially on social media, that don't get done. But I will say this, on Instagram, you could find exactly who was there. You could just go on Stormer's Instagram along with the other 500,000 followers, and you could see Kobus Reinach running practice. So I don't think it was necessarily a hide the ball. I would think most teams look at Instagram first before anything else. and they all on each other's feeds. So Toulon would have said, "Oh, there he is."
Yeah.
Also, there is no ability to hide any of this stuff, and so the players have their own Instagrams. So I don't. It's not cloak and dagger. It's more chalk it up to something more along the lines of a lot of things to get done in about a 3-day period, and a lot of those things didn't go right logistically. I'll just say that. Yeah.
Yet the Bulls managed to put out a team on Monday. Plenty of time. Traveled as well as far. Anyway, I'm just joking.
But Bulls have a simpler matrix here. Like, there is no way anyone expects the Bulls to beat Glasgow. Like, no one expects that. This would be one of the great upsets of the season. I really think it's cool, and I want that to happen. But I don't think it's the same as what Stormers are doing now, number 2 on the log, and a sort of a game you should win, but at what price? To your other thing that you're doing when you're second on the log.
I know.
Yeah.
Bulls got the same problem. I just wanted to say, you and I both know that the teams have access to the hotel registers. They know who's coming anyway. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. It wasn't intentional, maybe even, I suppose. All right, before we talk about the Bulls, I want to take this opportunity to implore you. I was thinking of the word the other night and I couldn't remember it, but I've remembered it now. Beseech you, please. I implore you, I beg you, I stand on my knees with tears in my eyes, like my mother used to say. Subscribe to this channel, please, and go visit our website. I wrote an interesting article there because I was thinking about this, the Stormers and Bulls thing that you and I did, and I realized a lot of what we saw was because of the glasses that we were wearing. I was looking at the Bulls in a certain fashion because I expected that, and you were the same at the Stormers. I was wondering if you and I swapped places, and I was at the Stormers and you were at the Bulls, what you and I would have seen, because we're completely different people. So go read that article. I think it's quite interesting. Did you read it?
Yeah, I did. And it's interesting with that movie called Trading Places, where these billionaires decide what if we put all the money with this guy and change circumstances. That would be interesting to do. I had one little tiny flavor, and I know you've been around Dobbo a lot in press conferences as well. But when I was in Munster with the Bulls last season, I got a much more limited view, but an interesting view nevertheless of some of it. But the problem is I was so circumscribed. It was basically Jake White and I sitting on the touchline, me leaning over, and we talked for 45 minutes or so. And then again in the kitchen after the game. I didn't really get access to anyone except for Kobus Wiese. And that's just because Kobus Wiese is a very gregarious guy who likes to wander around at a party and have a beer with people he doesn't know. Whereas a lot of the players are close-knit. If they're in Ireland, they don't want to get too far out there and just go to some strange bar or something. Probably Kobus Wiese could handle himself in any bar. He is the bar. My gut feel was that there was the dissimilarities. But I liked the article because it made me think again and thought, maybe there's a lot less different than I think. And it's more about the interlocutor, who's the one going on the road.
Exactly. I mean, you could talk to a bloody lamppost and the guy will respond to you. That's the thing. And I'm not like that. I'm shy and I'm retiring a little bit reticent. So that's interesting. I just wanted to say something. If you could have picked a worse weekend to go visit the Bulls, that weekend in Munster was probably the worst, because now we know what was going on there. Yeah.
So crazy, isn't it? Like, now that I know what was really going on, and we're not actually at liberty to say all those things, I cannot believe what a strange world I wandered into. And I knew it was strange, but for all the wrong reasons. And I had everything kind of wrong. I had everything upside down. And I had no idea that behind the scenes, people were battling for their careers and jobs and lives. It's weird. And it was a great win too. And that was, I think maybe the win. So this is what my theory is. If there had been a cruel loss, like a horrible wipeout loss, then it would have got even uglier in the post-match beers. There might have been, who knows what would have been thrown across the bar. But because it was a win, for one day or for one night, everyone just like, oh, hey, everything's great. So let's carry on.
Yeah, let's just have this beer, and tomorrow will take care of itself. Yeah, so there we go. So I've done my homework. I've implored everybody to subscribe to everything that moves. Oh, on that subject, remember to go register for those events of ours. If you're interested, you register, and then we'll let you know when those things come up. The little get-togethers we're going to be doing during the Greatest Rivalry Tour, some of them with Tim Cocker. Right, let's talk about the Bulls. Now I'm really interested. My ears are pricking up. You and I have been talking to Neil the Brain and the likes and giving some ideas, and the feedback we got was positive, I suppose. How can the Bulls beat Glasgow? You just said it, and it's sort of, I didn't like it when you say, "Yeah, nobody expects the Bulls to win," and it's true actually, and that probably what makes it making it worse because nobody's expecting the Bulls to win, but they believe they can win. I saw it. I saw the way they were planning for it. I saw the way they were talking to each other. They honestly believe they can win this one. So how are they going to do it?
The Bulls are a better team than Glasgow. If I had to pick the guys, and I saw the names on the Bulls sheet, and I saw the Glasgow, I would pick the Bulls. The problem is, and this is no spite or shot at Johan Ackerman, he's new in the job, is Franco's there. The reason why I'm for Glasgow is Franco is an established coach, many years in, several seasons in. All of his systems are bedded in. His assistant coaches, operate like clockwork. They have confidence. They've been doing the thing that they say they want to do for a while. It's been happening. They've been able to handle the games they should win, they're winning. The games they shouldn't win, they win anyway. That's Glasgow. So we just have to acknowledge that. But I would still, if you said there couldn't be any preparation at all for 2 weeks, the players couldn't talk to any coaches at all. It was a strange, whatever rule. I don't know why. Some kind of weird COVID thing or something. And they just rolled out there and you said, just play. Or actually, just fight. I would say the Bulls will win. So, if it was just a street fight. So I suppose my thinking is this: the Bulls can. This is not a fantasy. Could they upset Glasgow? They could win. They have a shot. But it's the underdog. There's no doubt at all that the Bulls are underdogs. And I think the pathway to beat them is harder just because Glasgow doesn't have a lot of flaws. That's the thing. I don't think Glasgow's that great at any one thing or a lot of things. They're just not bad at anything.
Good point.
And that's the problem because the Bulls are still bad at some stuff. And Glasgow will know it. They will know exactly what to do. They know exactly where to go to score, and they are sure they can score on the Bulls. So yeah, I have a 6-point plan for the Bulls to upset Glasgow, and I'm pretty confident about it if these things were to happen. And Glasgow has something to say about it. They could prevent these things from happening. But if the Bulls drove the car into this particular part of the bush and got into the right spot, into the right flooded river, flash flood river, and they had the right caliber of rifle, and they had the sun behind them and the wind in the right spot, I think they can make this hunt work. So you ready for my 6-point plan?
Yeah, before we do that, I just want to make a public announcement. Franco, if you're watching this, press stop now. Don't watch any further.
He knows everything already. He even knows what I'm thinking right now. Franco is omniscient. So number one is make it messy. I just kind of alluded to it, and maybe it's some of these, sometimes something obvious sounds too obvious, but it's not. This is the key. Glasgow depends on one fact and one statistic and one reality, not just the stat itself, but the reality behind the stat depends on it. And Franco said it on this pod. We count the number of times the ball leaves one hand to go to the other in every practice. And the number that they have is weird. It's a weird number because no one else even comes close. What does it tell you? It tells you that the enemy has a lot of faith in its error rate. Glasgow doesn't make errors with ball in hand. Now, it sounds like a strength to the Glasgow, and it kind of is, right? But it's also a potential vulnerability because when something is so dependent, when it's so built on one thing, and their error rate's so much lower than the Bulls make so much more errors, then if you can sort of, on that day, have your best error rate Bulls, the lowest error rate Bulls, and the highest error rate Glasgow, you're going to win the game. You will win the game. You will win the game ugly. It won't even make sense. Maybe every other stat's going to be wrong, but that is going to kill the Glaswegian Warriors because they cannot fight with their sword and their shield on the ground. They keep everything. They're always armored. So if you take away their armor, you can kill them. And how do you make it messy? I mean, this is a different issue. This is more technical. But I think the Bulls can shoot more. They can blitz more. They can take more chances on defense. And they can try to make it this is my second point, meet me on the gain line game. I don't like your chances if it's going to be played in the midfield, out the back, in space. I like it very much if you are meeting them on the gain line and they are meeting you on the gain line because that's the only place they can go. So there you want to jar these guys. 2-man smash tackles. They're weak on the gain line. If there's one weakness they have, is they're not able to just punch through a team. They play around the team. They don't play through a team. And if you can encourage a team to try to play through you when you know they cannot, because they're going to run into your big boys, then you're happy. So how do you put them into, the killing zone? How do you run them into that funnel? So I think the first point of making it messy is really important. The minute you make a mess, or you drop a ball, or something's a bit slow, or it's ragged, you end up putting your head down and running into contact, because you don't want to. Glasgow is not going to be so stupid as to exacerbate it by trying to throw even longer ones behind the gain line. They're going to try to get gain line. So if you force someone to meet you on the gain line, I think the Bulls win. So number 1 and 2 are related. I want a messy barroom brawl, and it's all going to be my ego against yours. Lure, testosterone young men into the idea that it's all about that. Don't be smart today. Try to mix it up with me and then make them regret that. You can do that because you have Jan-Hendrik Wessels and Grobela. You can do that because you have Kobus Wiese and you have Cameron Hanekom starting. You can do that because Elrich Lowe is one of the great gain line monsters in world rugby. And if you go, then project that back into the midfield, and you get to Harold Forster, also really good in contact. There's a lot of people that can just take their man on. So lure them into a tragic ego fight. Lure them into that. You might have to do some chatter, some banter, some chirp. You would know more than anyone else. Maybe it's Steenekamp that can be the chirper. I don't know. But Get them into that mode. Get them into, no, I'm going to show you, And otherwise, you're on a 4G pitch running around chasing shadows. Not fun. Number 3 is carry low. And I'm talking about carry Elrich Lowe, although Elrich Lowe is an instrumental part of this particular point. Number 3 is to carry low in height. Glasgow has one of the highest tackle shapes in the world. They also are really good at not missing tackles, and there's a correlation. The Reds were the highest tackling team in Super Rugby. I'm talking in height, sternum, ribs, and they were good at percentage tackles, because it turns out if you go low, you miss a lot. It's easier to fend someone when they go for your shins or the knees. You can step them. You can actually stride them and hurdle them without leaving the ground. Think about tackling. Who's a hard guy to tackle? Think about tackling Sasha or Cameron Hanekom. Okay, so I'm in open field and I want to tackle them. I'm much safer riding them like a backpack, I'm much safer getting a hold of them somewhere in here, grappling. I'm going to bring you down. I'll make you wear me. But if I'm trying to guess where your knee and shin's going to be, they're too quick, too strong. You could probably hit Cameron Hanekom right in the thigh and he'd bounce you. So that's the problem. So Glasgow has a high tackle shape, the highest, and that can bring cards. So point 3 is all about making them get carded, because they have a bad habit. They have a bad habit that they believe in. They don't want to change that habit because they believe high tackling is smarter and better, but they don't have monster gain line athletes. They need to tackle you around here. And I think getting in there, and then so I change it up. I carry about this much lower than normal, and now I'm hitting your knee instead of your waist, and someone will get it wrong and somebody will get carded.
So that means, sorry, you're just saying they go high, they run high. If you drop a little bit, they might end up tackling you too high.
Yes.
Penalty, maybe a card. Okay.
Because it's really hard to change that shape in round whatever we are of rugby. We're in this too deep. We've been playing 20 games now. So if I'm still carrying the highest if I'm tackling the highest in the world, then I want to be a low carrier and I want to basically dip at the final moment. Will the ref say, well, you dip mitigation? Maybe, but sometimes it's 50-50. Maybe my late dip, if I'm Jan-Hendrik Wessels and I'm charging through like a buffalo.
There's your dipper, by the way.
Then just dip one more time and try to get low. And then maybe you catch something around the shoulders, around the neck. Maybe you get an elbow or a forearm, and then they're off to the bin for a yellow card. In my opinion, if Glasgow were to be -2 cards to the Bulls, so Glasgow gets 2 cards more than the Bulls win. Bulls win. It's that simple, because then the other things I just talked about of making it messy and me on the gain line become easier to do, because now Glasgow has to do that. They have to meet you on the gain line. Point number 4 is Glasgow doesn't really like to play on the blind side. And my theory is, and it's still something that Hugh Griffin might be able to tell me I'm wrong on, is teams that don't attack on the blind side aren't good at defending on the blind side. It's a bit like, I don't know, the corollary would be like salespeople can be sold. We have habits ourselves, and they make us vulnerable. So I think if you're not thinking about the blind side when you're attacking, flip the script and get Papier to play a 2-man game with Cameron, peeling off any source. It could be, line out ball at the tail. It could be a good scrum, but in the tram area, or, second ruck, third ruck when able to go wide, and you've got a slender blind side, slender enough where Glasgow goes, they're not going to go blind side. Who goes blind side when you're only 10 meters from, touch? It's stupid, right? But it's not, because Papier is quick enough to beat anyone in a little box. He's able to stretch. We've been seeing that all season. Cameron's quick enough compared to forwards that he can beat any forward. And then you just have a wing lurking, a la Damien Penaud type, just someone just steaming down the trams. Does it get to him? Dunno. But what you want is Papier to be running literally on the dotted line. So that's his mark. Papier, can you beat the opposing 9 or flank to that dash line, and then get there and just run, and then know that you have a guy on your left and the right. I think that play with a kick through, if it's the wing, or Cameron just take it into contact and break tackles, is the kind of thing that could break Glasgow open and expose them. Once they've been exposed once to a blindside move, a raid, it messes you up the rest of the match. Now you're always thinking you have to put one more guy to mark the blind side, which that means you have 5 guys on the open side instead of 6. And so that numbers game works for you. If you can guard them, even better. So I say that, and the Bulls don't go blind very much either. So this would be cool, even better, because no one's expecting the Bulls to go blind. Glasgow is not thinking about blind. So then pull one of those every 10 minutes. Just keep them honest. That's what it is. Even if it doesn't work exactly, so what? You set another ruck up. Papier to Cameron. Cameron just runs hard to contact, and you've got a cleaner coming. So, yeah, that's number 4. Number 5 is Scrumpalooza, which means the Scottish scrum guys that are really good are not in Glasgow. They're in Edinburgh. So there's an opportunity there. How does that play nowadays? Who knows? The scrum is depowered. It's not about people want to depower the scrum. They're coming. They already did it, which is they make you do like Superman stuff to get a penalty. So the refs will probably just say play the ball and not let you milk a penalty, and they will let you do route 1 through the. That's interesting too. So the French teams in their own league have been refereeing the scrum really cool. Like, you have to actually have a credible put in. It's interesting now we have Champions Cup. To what extent will the mix up of those two styles with the rest of rugby rewarding the weaker scrum by just saying put it in and get it out? Will the French doctrine take over, which we would like better?
And it's a French referee, by the way.
Yeah, so that's interesting. But the Bulls do have ascendancy there. I guess my question is this: can the Bulls be smart enough and on the day with pictures and conversation? Franz Malherbe talks a lot about, he told me what he does is he starts up a conversation low, respectful, not yelling or chirping at the ref quickly, like from the first scrum. What do you want to see? Did you see that? Sir, did my bind look okay? It's interesting. And I say, well, what's the downside? He goes, well, sometimes refs don't want to talk to you, but that's okay too. If I say it and he says nothing, so what? Then I'm going to go on. But most of them will say, yeah, good. But keep it long. Keep your bind long. So now he's got valuable information on the day. So, when they're packing down, Jan-Hendrik Wessels, don't chirp at the ref. Just chat with him. Just have a nice chat. And you can milk penalties that way, because the refs are just human. They are just like anyone else. they will be affected by the tone and delivery and the information source. The final one is kick the damn ball. Glasgow is not a big kick returning, try scoring team. They build their tries off of phases. They get into the right areas. They move the ball around. So you're kind of safe with one of the world's greatest kicking tens ever to overkick. And I think whatever the number is that people think is too much kicking, probably must kick more than that. So if 40 is too much, then kick 44 times and just keep kicking. Do not fall into the trap of trying to run phase from your own 30 meters into Glasgow. You're just going to get pinged. It's not going to work. And I fear for that tactic. That is the one thing that I hope we don't see. On your selection side, by the way, I really like this Bulls team. I like it a lot. You have really big tacklers, Low, Hanekom, Marcel Coetzee, that are unloading on people. Harold Forster, too, from the midfield. You have Rudolph and Visa that are actually, really ramping up their physicality. At hooker, you have Eskom, and you have Vessels, who's sort of a floater as well. So, those 7 guys are real assassins. They can really hurt you. And I think they can do the mess up and the meet you on the gain line and the carry low. On the go blind, I think Papier and Gans are a good option there with Cameron. That'd be a nice little play. And then you have really intelligent kicker Andre Pollard. Question mark is David Creel. David Creel's named at fullback. This is something you talked about a while ago, and we kind of analyzed that. I would just say this will be one of his biggest examinations of his career, David Creel.
Yeah. The one name you didn't mention that I'm very curious about, and when Johan was asked about this in the press conference, he sort of talked around it, is Chesil Jooste at wing, starting this time, and Cannon moving back to center. You're talking about speed, and maybe having a wing hovering on the blind side. Is that what you're seeing, or maybe something else for Jooste? Because he is a deadly weapon in the Bulls arsenal.
No, he's electric. I saw someone online, they were comparing his actual speed rates, measured athletic speed in the 100 meters, and then putting it onto the pitch, I know, which is different. And it was, meters per second. And it was right there with Louis BRA. Yeah. So, who is the wing that right now looks the quickest to the eye is Louis BRA. And if Jooste is right there, and I'm talking it was fractional, you want to get that person into the same space. And if I was working with Jooste, it'd be all about the kick, the chip and chase, because the minute you chip the ball over, it just becomes like Brian Habana speed. How many times did Brian score a try by chipping, and then the bounce just becomes whoever is the quickest gets there, and your opponent has to track back, stop, and go. So I would imagine that the pairing of Moody inside his shoulder is something they're really working on. That final flip, the final kick. You see a lot of the French method is a lot of getting into a midfield and then pooching it through. Ramos or Deportier will kick diagonally for their quick wing to run onto. So, especially when you have a hard field, it's a good idea to get the ball bouncing behind and have speedster running. So what's the worst that can happen? A lot of times you get a line out deep in coffin corner, or someone, does field it, but then you are able to get over the ball and win a penalty. So I do think, kicking again is the kick space, the chip space is going to be super important against Glasgow. There's one thing that no team can defend. No team can defend it, is really perfectly done chip space, kick space. There's no way to get there. You go to a match and specifically get a seat behind the poles, like Andre Pretorius talks about, and behold with your eyes how much space the fullback encounters. It's terrifying. How does he get from here to there? So I think Jooste is the guy who will win the one-on-ones when there's just space. He's going to win that. I don't know it seems like no one can catch him right now. Moody is quick, but it's only in a straight line. So, I think what I want to see from Kanan is to actually do what Jesse Creel does a lot nowadays, is just take all the thought process out and just run up that channel as hard as you can. He's a big load to bring down, and then there will be an opportunity from that. Then you'll get the fractured line and go forward. So this one's tough to predict. I feel like the Bulls will be in it. I think Glasgow has a lot of weapons and a lot of smarts, but I'm going to go with my heart right now and say Andre Pollard makes a match winner from 55 meters and looks in the camera and says, "That was for Mvia."
Yeah, thank you, Andre. So let's say something about Chesley Juster. I'll speak under correction here, but from what I gathered, he's the fastest Bulls player ever. They measured him over a certain distance, and he was comfortably the fastest. And even when he's running, he's got the highest top speed, and he's not running even at full pace. So a lot more to come from him. He's an incredible, incredible athlete.
Ever. That means you're talking about Brian Abana. Oh,
Ever.
okay.
He's
Interesting.
He's quick. So quick, but he's 19 years
he
old.
has a 10.34 in the 100 meters that was measured in athletics on a track, with shoes. It's really funny. He looks like one of those guys who has an extra gear.
Yeah,
it's really fun. It's fun to watch him. I every time I hear his name and it's a highlight, I'm definitely watching.
Well, that's it. You maybe asked me the other night about who's, we talk about sizes, and you said how small Paul de Villiers actually is. And that's the one thing I was thinking about afterwards. Who was actually surprised me by how small they are. And Chesley Hurst is one of them. He's small. He's not a big guy. And now you talked about Glasgow going around players. I mean, that means the wings are exposed. How good is his defense, do you think? Is that maybe a vulnerability?
Yeah. So if I was just drawing a circle, if I'm Franco and I'm, in my lair with my giant map and all my plans, and I'm having a good laugh, I'm chuckling.
Evil chuckle.
Yeah, evil, but a very righteous man, very, very, very God-fearing man.
Yeah.
So I must point that out. But he will be circling in red the connection between David Creel and Chesley Juster.
Good point.
That's the connection he's going to be in. He's going to be probing that all day long. Are they talking enough? Do they know what it means? Are their codes solid? In a moment of stress, will Juster try to do too much instead of just kick the ball out? Will he try to be a hero? The young man's exuberance has Creel done enough and seen enough pictures at fullback to recognize something weird. Franco's really good at that. He will pull something out. Yeah.
Very good point. All right. Did I miss your prediction? How much? You said your heart's going to say the Bulls, but did you say how much? How much? By how much?
Andre Pollard by 1 or 2 points with a kick at the end at the death, breaking Glaswegian hearts, breaking Tillman von Deft's hearts, and the Grey College man from Scotland, and sending them home to think again, and setting up a juicy, wonderful North-South Stormers Bulls quarterfinal where our pod rules, because there's no other pod in the world that is specifically built around that particular eventuality than ours. We win.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely right. Okay. Let's just briefly talk about the Sharks, because we spent almost an hour now talking about the OCD. But like I said at the beginning, the Sharks are clearly not bothered to pitch up and win this thing. They just want to get it, tick the box, and move on to the URC, because they have a battle on their hands to end up in the top 8, especially not after not scoring a bonus point against Cardiff last week like we wanted and expected them to. So just briefly, what do you expect from that match?
But I think the Sharks can also get into Champions Cup if they win the Challenge Cup. They did it before once.
But also you can be in the Champions Cup if you're in the top 8 in the URC.
Right, there's 2 ways in, exactly. The weird way in is to win the Challenge Cup, which they did 2 years ago, I believe. I mean, look at the team, though. Like, you look at the team and you go,
Who's that?
You know how it's got some really interesting parts to it. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
Franco Smith's son at 10, by the way.
There are people who speak to you off the record, and these are real people who run teams. And I'm not talking about Stormers and Bulls at this point. I actually am not. So rule them out of this particular thing I'm about to say, who say it'd be better not to go too far in these cup cup things.
I agree.
Absolutely. There is a downside to it. And this is ridiculous. If you think about, organizers and how they try to set up things, they have to just tell themselves that this is ridiculous. Like, there's no way that should be a thing. So clearly it's, there's either too many teams qualifying for the Champions Cup. It must be more of a true champions versus champions. You just have your 8 teams. I don't know. I don't know I don't know how to do it. I'm the organizer, but something where it's truly elite.
Mm.
Yeah.
Top 2 or 3 of the top 14, same with the URC, same with the Premiership. Let's say top 3. That's 9 teams. That's a bit of an awkward number. If you can get down to 8 teams somehow, the top 8, on the log, whatever it might be, and then just have a quick, weekend after weekend, right at the end of the URC, after the URC, do that.
Because that's cool. That's cool. That's a reward. That's like basically you're reenacting the Harry Index. It's not a mystery anymore. You're actually seeing it play out, and it's fun. This way, because it happens intermittently, like you say, it breaks up the story, the narrative of the actual leagues, and too many situations happen where you're not sure the team really wants to win. I'm not saying anyone bags the game. No one just gives it away. These are proud warriors out there, but it's on the planning side. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And like I said, if they can do it differently, do it at the end of the season, that's something you can look forward to. It builds up to that. I'm all for it. But this little, I don't know what you want to call it, cameo, it's so stupid. It breaks up everything. Anyway, Harry, that was awesome. Thank you. Let me get this out. I'm going to watch this now tomorrow with what you said just now in mind and see what I can see, how much of that's actually being played on the field. That's so interesting. I love.
How happy am I going to be if one of my little ideas happens for the Bulls and several of my ideas happen for the Stormers? I'm going to be so happy, like a proud parent of an idea.
The interesting thing is that this is one of those weekends where we support the South African side regardless of who they are. That's the thing. I mean, next weekend, a different story.
Yeah. Absolutely want to have a quarterfinal Bulls Stormers. It would be box office, immediate sellout. It's going to be, it will make the whole European Cup thing, sort of start to have the takeoff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. By the way, we're going to be doing live reactions on both these games. They might not be that long because we have a very short turnaround between them, especially the one after the Stormers before the Bulls start. That will be quite quick. But then we'll also do one after the Bulls. So looking forward to that. Watch out. The links are on our channel, YouTube channel. Go watch for it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Cheers.